I'm Sienna. I'm the kid.
I'm Sarah. I'm the mom.
This is Queer Kid Straight Mom.
Let's talk.
Welcome back to Queer Kid Straight Mom. We were hoping to have a guest on this episode, but due to scheduling, we will hopefully have her on our next episode. Today, we are going to keep this a little bit short because things are really busy right now. Sienna and Irene are packing up to move to North Carolina at the end of the week, and there's a lot going on. So we just decided to do something fun today, which is a game we like to play called But Make It Gay. And this is the musical version where I'm going to throw out a character from a musical, and Sienna is going to tell me queer or not and why. First, I am starting with the Phantom of the Opera from the Phantom of the Opera.
Okay, I think the Phantom is trans in some capacity. I don't know how or what the details are, but there's just something about the idea of you are so disgusting and shameful that you must be hidden away from society and live in the basement of an opera. I mean, the level of melodrama is also very queer. And that you have this beautiful young woman with this amazing, beautiful voice who is sort of your puppet, and the way you communicate through her or you present yourself through her, I don't know. That feels like there's trans subtext to me.
So it's not even so much that he's in love with Christine as he wants to be Christine. Or he sees Christine as a voice for a part of himself that is hidden away. Like maybe the intense longing that the Phantom feels for Christine isn't to be with her romantically, but something that she represents.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that comes up, fairly often in queer stories, actually, and in real life for trans people. This idea of well, am I in love with this person, or do I want to be this person? Am I in love with this person, or is there something I really admire about this person? Like, it's something that trans people will a lot of times refer to as gender envy.
So somebody kind of invokes this really strong feeling that people tend to assume is a romantic attachment, but it might be more that you're seeing something of yourself in that person that you wish you could be.
Yeah, and I think that's why sexual orientation can be very confusing for a lot of trans people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be true for anybody regardless, right? That I think a lot of times when straight women talk about having a girl crush on a woman, it's not a crush so much as that person's so cool. I wish I could be that person.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's something that would be helpful for cisgender people to just as a way of understanding the way gender can be kind of constructed for everybody, right? Regardless of whether or not you're trans, that we're all sort of participating in this elaborate ritual of gender presentation that, yeah, a cisgender person can also look at someone and say, wow, that person emulates gender in the way I wish I emulated gender.
Yeah. Interesting. So we think that could be going on with the Phantom.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting take. Cosette from Les Mis.
Boring. She's boring.
Poor Cosette. She's just not that interesting. So straight. You're sure Cosette is pretty straight?
I don't know. Probably somewhere out there, someone has done something interesting with Cosette, and to that, I applaud them because I can't come up with anything very interesting. She bores me.
But you have told me in the past that you have theories about Eponine.
Yes. Okay, I do feel very strongly about this one. Eponine is trans. Eponine is a transgender man.
I could see that. I mean, it's not like she leans into her feminine wiles to make money or convince people to give her money or to get some rich guy to marry her or something.
Right. I think there's this very interesting dynamic. She starts, especially if you look at some of it goes a little bit more into their relationship in the book, I think, between Eponine and Cosette, where, Eponine is this very kind of pampered little girl. Her parents are all like, oh, you're perfect little Eponine, perfect daughter, et cetera, et cetera. And they're very mean to Cosette. And Cosette is sad and neglected and whatever. And then they sort of switch roles once they are adults. And it feels to me as though Eponine has also, in addition to her family sort of having fallen into poverty, Eponine is also like taking a lot of heat from her parents for like not being who they want her to be, of like, disappointing them in this way that, I don't know, is sort of implied a lot. That, oh, you're like running around with these schoolboys all the time and you're like, whatever.
Speaking of her parents, there's something very queer about the Thénardiers, but I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's just that they're campy.
I think it's just that they're campy. I don't know.
They got their own thing going on.
Yeah, they're weird.
Hey, speaking of lameness, do you think that Jean Valjean is gay? Do you go with the theory that he actually is Cosette's father? Or both?
Okay, well,
Or neither?
first of all, I think that the theory that he's actually Cosette's father is sort of lame because I think that, like, I don't know, dilutes the power of the story, right?
Mhm.
That, well, it doesn't have to be your actual blood relative, and that blood relatives are not necessarily the most important thing, right? That Cosette having someone, again, with Eponine being this foil for Cosette, that Cosette having someone who makes the conscious choice to love her despite not being a blood relative, and also like the result of her mother Fantine's conscious choice to love and protect her daughter, is what ultimately allows Cosette to like live a happy, meaningful life, whereas the Thénardiers' refusal to like love and care about Eponine in a lot of ways is connected to her like dying sad.
Agree. I've never liked that theory.
No, I think Jean Valjean is ace, actually.
Okay. That kind of makes sense.
Because if you think about it, like, there's never any indication that romantic or sexual relationships are something he's interested in pursuing, even before, all of the getting thrown in prison and then being kind of in hiding with Cosette for a long time. Even before that, all we really know of his backstory in the musical, at least, is that he stole a loaf of bread to feed his sister's son, not his son, but his sister's son, which suggests that that was like the most meaningful relationship in his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That tracks. All right. How about Hades from Hadestown, which, by the way, is in the theaters right now, a recording of the musical, and it's excellent. So go see it if you haven't. And
It
it's
is
still showing where you are.
very good. I mean, I want to push back because I think the immediate reaction is, of course, to look at Hades and be like, well, he's this sort of emblem of like power and privilege. And so, your immediate reaction is to be like, ah, yes, cisgender straight man. However, I do want to push back on that because I don't want to suggest that, people in positions of power and privilege and people who abuse their power and privilege cannot be queer. With that in mind, I do think it could be interesting because I've also always thought, like, I enjoy the idea of Orpheus being a trans guy, not necessarily for specific textual reasons. I just think that, like, his vocal part is very well suited to a trans guy. But if we were to roll with that, I do think it would be kind of interesting for it to have, again, this sort of dichotomy between Orpheus and Hades both being trans men, and like how they each differently choose to embrace like masculinity and power and that gender imbalance that comes along with it, right? Something that trans guys have to deal with as you start transitioning and being perceived as a cisgender man, potentially passing as cis. You start to have male privilege, which is a very weird experience for a lot of people who have been dealing with having misogyny directed at them for most of their lives.
Right.
And so it is something that you have to make kind of a conscious choice. And I do think it is possible to make the choice to actually embrace misogyny and male privilege. And so I think it could be a kind of interesting exploration of those different choices between Hades and Orpheus. And Orpheus, of course, could also be a really good example of like a healthy masculinity of, protecting and caring about the people around you and leadership and all of these sort of idealized concepts of masculinity without, being abusive or controlling or insisting on being above other people.
Yeah, I like that. Idealized images of masculinity aside from the inability to follow basic instructions.
Also, yes.
There's still that. But yes, that is a really interesting thing to think about, those different ways that you could choose to embody masculinity as you adopt that
Mhm.
into your life. That's fascinating. Alexander Hamilton.
Okay, so actually, like, historically, Alexander Hamilton, historians believe, was bisexual and also a giant loser.
Back to inability to follow basic instructions.
Like, yeah, I mean, there is kind of some theory out there that is, we have John Lawrence, the character in Hamilton, who is also a real historical figure, that some historians believe may have been in a relationship with Hamilton at one point. And I don't know, like, people play with that in fan fiction and stuff in the musical. More people, I think, in the fan fiction community are interested in, like, Hamilton and Burr because, I don't know, I guess that there's something inherently homoerotic about the foil.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, that does tend to be the dynamics that people tend to see queer subtext for. They tend to involve foil characters. I don't know why that is.
That's kind of funny because when we were talking about Les Mis earlier, I go on these like hyper speed mental journeys sometimes during a conversation, and I had like a whole like little Valjean and Javert. That would be fascinating. Anyway, so yes, I see what you're saying because that popped into my head.
There has to be some, like, surely someone out there has written a thesis on this or something about, like, why are foils so homoerotic?
Yeah. I guess because they always say like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
It's true, and people do tend to find, like, that enemies to lovers dynamic very compelling, and, I mean, also, I suppose it's in some ways the ideal recipe for a love interest because it has to be a foil has to be someone who is, like, similar enough to your main character. Like, there have to be some similarities, but also, like, they have to be very spiritually aligned characters, I guess.
Because the point is showing the ways that even though they are alike, this is that
Right,
key
what is the
difference
key
between them.
difference? Yeah, so, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and there's like already tension there. So like that could
Right.
go, either way.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Hamilton, maybe, but it's not Burr like everybody would go to.
Based on historicalness, whatever, yeah. As far as I can tell, the only nod in the actual Hamilton musical to that is when Hamilton's, like, talking to all the various sidekicks, and he goes, "Lawrence, I like you a lot," which I think is a really lame compliment, by the way. Because then he says to another character that his pants look hot. So, like, I think that's a much better compliment than "I like you a lot."
2 thumbs down to Alexander Hamilton across the board.
Well, because of course, like, we want to be sympathetic to the queer people of history, the queer men of history who were forced to have straight passing relationships for the sake of, like, not being ostracized from society. Yes. But we also want to acknowledge the fact that they often did not treat the women in their lives particularly well, and that women were often, like, these unwilling participants in these
Right.
kind of fake marriages. But also, like, Hamilton was, to the best of our knowledge, bisexual. Like, he doesn't really have a good excuse.
And he could like surely somebody that's really power hungry like that could have found an advantageous marriage where the woman was on board with the plan.
Right.
Hitch your wagon to my star,
Or, like, if
we
you
both win.
just genuinely like Eliza, like, also, like, stick with Eliza. Like, people of all sexual orientations have to deal with, "Oh, but there's also that other person I'm attracted to." Too bad!
Yeah.
You're married. Suck
Right.
it up.
He made a commitment.
Stop embodying the slutty bisexual stereotype, Hamilton.
He is not popular here.
No.
You feel a way about Alexander Hamilton that I feel about Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel that way about Ernest Hemingway. Ugh.
Anyway, Jack from Newsies. I'm sorry, he is Christian Bale in my head. So whatever you're going to say, like, I'm going to have to adapt to him being Christian Bale.
Yeah, okay, whatever. I do not have any such strong associations with Christian Bale. This is another one, and I'm detecting a little bit of a trend, I guess, with my headcanons here. But I also think that Jack is a trans guy.
How so?
Well, if you think about, I mean, mainly the song Santa Fe. I don't know. I just think that, it's this song about how he's on the surface level. It's like primarily about, I'm stuck, working for rich men and like having to scrape by day and like whatever. But I also see a lot of it I am trapped in like kind of a world that doesn't reflect who I am. If you kind of imagine what his life might look like as a trans guy, that like, well, yeah, he's a trans guy, but you don't know. There could be people who might show up at any time. He could get out at any time. And he's like still, again, in this position of like like barely scraping by every day and not really being able to live like kind of independently the way he wants to. I just think like kind of aligns well. And so this idea of like, I want to, go to Santa Fe and be my own person and like be the man I want to be. I don't know. I think it works well. And at the end of the musical, I think we decided in the movie, he and the girl end up together. But in the musical, he like does go off to Santa Fe and like leaves the girl behind, which is of course like not your traditional like happy romantic ending. But to me, there's an aspect of that would kind of make sense if he's a trans guy. He's like, well, I mean, yeah, I love this girl, but like, I don't see a way that this relationship could work out.
I saw that when I was in high school, and I just related to it because I lived in Oklahoma and I very much wanted to leave. So Santa Fe struck me for that reason. But I could totally see that, like my being in a place where I didn't fit was just because I was in Oklahoma. But yes, I could see those feelings if you were like either trans and trying to live that life, but not feeling like you could do it there, or if you were still feeling like if you felt like you were trapped in the wrong body and trying to get out.
Right. It's subtext, right? And in my opinion, in the best stories, the external conflict sort of maps onto a character's internal conflict. And so the external conflict of, oh, the newspaper barons are oppressing me and my friends and we must fight against them and I want to be free of that oppression, also maps onto I want to be free of the roles that society has forced onto me and I want to be my own person.
I could see that being a very meaningful interpretation if you were in that place watching that story. Well, that wraps that up for us. Like I said, we've got a full plate, but we do these from time to time. So if there's anything that you are really curious about or have feelings that, oh, this character, I want to hear this, let us know. And we still want everybody to check out our new Patreon and the subscriber content that is there, as well as continuing to tune in to this podcast. We'll catch you later.
Bye.
If you found this episode interesting, informative, amusing, please review and follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. Getting those reviews and follows really helps us show up more in the algorithm and be able to reach more people to help them. You can find us on social media, Instagram, and Threads at queerkid.straightmom, Blue Sky at qksm.bsky.social, and Facebook at Queer Kid Straight Mom. We are no longer on Twitter.